E2E, full stack, CAS, GitOps, SLAs. You might wonder what all this stuff means and what it has to do with automation, especially when it comes to telcos. We all talk about automation a lot, but wonder how it can be applied to telecommunication network. Yes, it's complicated. Everybody knows this. But let's crack open the topic of automation and how dynamic it is and see where it takes us. Hello and welcome back everyone to another Telcos Get Technical podcast here at VMware. I'm your host, Anupama Mahabhashyam, Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager. And I'm here today with my co-host, Steve Hoenisch, a Senior Technical Marketing Manager at VMware. Joining us today to discuss the different levels of automation in the telco space is Jason James, Senior Product Marketing Manager. Welcome, Jason, and thank you so much for joining us in the session today. We usually start off with giving the audience a bit of background of the guest. So can you tell us about your role at VMware and also some of your history in tech and some of your other roles as well?
How you doing, Steve and Anupama? Sorry about that. Yes, I can tell you. Again, my name is Jason James. I've been in the IT industry for about a little over 20 years, and I've held quite a dynamic set of positions. I've been a chief architect. I've been on the delivery where I'm setting up, delivering projects and installing technology on customer sites. I have been in sales. I've been in, proof of concepts, proven technologies on a global scale, and now I'm in marketing and marketing in the telco space.
So thanks, Jason, for joining us today. Let's start off with the basics a little bit. I want to just level set the conversation by having you explain some of the terms around automation. So what are some of the common automation technologies used in the telco industry today, and how do they work?
I think there are different levels and different aspects of automation. So say, for instance, if I'm thinking about automating deployment of containers, right? I might say GitOps. And GitOps is a form of a descriptive language where I describe my application in a repository, and then I have maybe another deployment, Kubernetes, maybe go grab that YAML file, and then follow the instructions to deploy it. So that's one form. Then there's another form where you may say, end-to-end or E2E, right? End-to-end may be depending on where you are, and it means different things. So if I'm talking to a set of RAN engineers, that will be, I want to see automation of deployment of the applications that's going to allow me to receive a mobile connection from a user. And then I want to see that traffic go from the user to the core, right? That is one form of automation. Then there's another form of automation where CAS automation. CAS is
what does that stand for?
Container as a service. You almost got me there, Steve.
I'm sorry.
Container as a service. So this is where I want to have the application platform to then deploy containers in a managed way, and sometimes using GitOps to do that onto that platform, right? And then I might want to lifecycle manage that Kubernetes platform in an automated fashion as well. So automation could mean one or either all of those things. Have there been some that I missed?
Hardware?
Hardware, there's hardware automation as well. So maybe I want to bring up pieces of hardware in an automated fashion where I'm configuring BIOS options and setting things up properly for the operating system for performance, right?
So let's think about those elements in relation to some of the people who work at telcos, whether it be an operational or a deployment role or what have you. Can you tell us a little bit about the different audiences who might be involved in that kind of automation conversation when it comes to things like containers as a service or full stack automation? Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about those audience segments and when talking about automation?
Sure.
And and how it's important to them and why it should matter to them.
Sure. You've got a whole host of people involved in maybe supporting the application, maybe supporting the network. And each one of those levels, whether it's operations, deployment, site construction, applications, network management, all these folks have different perspectives of what automation may mean to them. And in each space, right, there may be a different tool to accomplish the types of automation that they're looking for that's going to help support them in their job.
So is there a language gap that we have to understand between different audiences that you just explained, or do we have to facilitate or interpret between levels or functional spaces within the conversation about automation itself?
I think being a liaison between the groups that we just mentioned is extremely important because we use similar language in all the functional spaces, but that similar language in each functional space may mean something different.
In that other space.
Yeah. And so we have to essentially recognize if we're in the operational space versus the RAN engineer space versus the application space when we say these words, because they don't all mean the same thing, although they may be the same or similar word. And so we have to be able to either connect the dots between the different functional spaces and then or translate, right, where we are to that person. Because while it's a individual, maybe conversation, right, I may need to expose them to the dynamic nature of what we just said.
And of course, it becomes even more complex with teams. And when you're doing something at a high level, like a network, something that's especially complicated. I think Anupama has a question probably related to something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like we were thinking like network automation is a key area of focus, right, for VMware. So can you talk to us about some specific tools or technologies used to automate network operations in general, or how do they help service providers manage their networks more effectively?
What a great question. And I think that question is dynamic as well. The tools in place to do some of these things could range from network deployment, network setup, which I guess we would call day 0, day 1, day 2, and on, right? So, and in these spaces, VMware has tools to address day 0 concerns versus day 1 concerns versus day 2 concerns. And we have automations in all of those spaces that address, say, for instance, bare metal bring up or maybe cast deployment, and then maybe application deployment, and then network monitoring. And then also integration of network application with the hardware, with the container, the hardware, and then onto the network.
So are you saying VMware is doing all from one tool, or is it like multiple tools that CSPs need to worry about?
Yes, there's one tool for automation and with different components to address these different levels of automation, even for different audiences, and for different, parts of I will say the IT team that care about these different spaces. And we have tools to address that.
So security is obviously a major concern for telcos these days. How can automation be used to enhance security, and what are some of the key problems that need to be addressed in this area?
I think, from an automation perspective, we do a really good job of preparing the platform, actually just preparing the platform for many years, right? For secure operations. We carry and feed virtual machines, we protect the network. And even we bring in automation, right? We can make sure that these things are, say, for instance, deployed from a single source of truth, right? And then if I want to invite my security team in to verify my single source of truth before it's deployed in an automated fashion, I can do that. So I think from a people process perspective, joining the automation process, whether that's GitOps or, we use, different tools like Helm charts, and CSAR files is something that is a telco standard, right? We can invite security to review, learn about these spaces and find out what's actually happening. in the infrastructure, right? By just
Yeah.
reading this document, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. So we can extend that question a little bit to cloud native technology. So how can we apply security at scale to some of the uses of cloud native technology in the telecommunications space?
I think that the attack vector changes when it comes to cloud native and security and inviting security to be a part of an automated process. What I mean by that is now that I have this document that describes my infrastructure, right? How my applications is deployed, how my hosts are configured, how I'm going to support high performance configurations, where I'm going to pull my images from, how they are going to be configured, right? Now the attack vector becomes where I store the document that tells the infrastructure what to do, right? So not only do I have to make sure that the components or the structure of that document is written in a secure fashion that integrates with my infrastructure, I have to now protect this document, because if I have a bad guy that wants to change something in my infrastructure, you have to change the document now, right? So in that sense, I think it's good that we can invite security to the table, and we can talk about the infrastructure that we're going to deploy before we do that. And then I also think once that's done, the attack vector has just been widened, because now I need to protect that, that document that describes my infrastructure, because it not only describes it, but it's the implementation map to what we're going to do. And if somebody can access that, then we've got a problem.
So we've been talking about various different topics, like from the application programming interfaces, like APIs perspective are often used to enable automation in telco space, right? So can you talk about like how VMware APIs help support automation?
I think as we've moved into this automation world, right, you can say, because we've been doing automation in different forms and factors for a long time at VMware. We've had VRA and so on and so forth, right? But I think in this telco space, APIs are important because APIs have become a first-class citizen in our telco products, which enables products that are upstream from us to engage the automation, our automation platform, right? When we talk those different automation spaces, right? We need the next level, higher level of, say, manager of managers, right? To be able to engage us in that business process through our APIs to make things happen according to whatever that business process is. And so within that, I think our applications provide APIs that are first-class citizens, ready to be engaged via upstream business models, right? To fit us into that business model to make our technology fit and work within that customer's process.
Yeah, so another area of focus, like we talked about telco's space from automation perspective, but there's another focus that is important, which is service assurance. So how is automation being used to ensure that telco services are reliable and meet service level agreements or SLAs?
Well, I think service assurance really, again, engages the APIs that make us, we've made our APIs the way our system works, first-class citizens, right? So now when I have service assurance, I have monitoring, alerting, and I can establish, say, a normal footprint for my network, right? I know how the operation of the network hums along. I know what's normal. Then I can start to identify anomalies and then fix things that are out of pattern, right? And I can automatically do those things, right? With the service assurance, whether that's, say, I got hardware that's failing or applications that's not behaving properly, right? We know what the good state is, and we know what, say, for instance, anomaly behavior is, and now I can alert against that and then take a corrective action.
Right. Okay, that's great. So you talked a little bit earlier about how the different teams in an organization are trying to use automation and might use the same terms slightly differently, perhaps, in their roles. What's the best way that we can help telecommunications teams in various different areas like operations or deployment or application management, for example, networks, kind of navigate this complex conversation around automation?
Steve, that's a great question. I really think that somehow we must figure out how to enable our sales teams and architects to be in our customer shoes in those functional spaces. And what I mean by that is, if I'm talking to a RAN engineer audience, then I must understand their concerns, what excites them, what's going to make their life easier, what are they looking for? And so I can fashion, and understand and contextualize my technology, our processes, what I can offer to them in such a way that makes sense to that group of people. And then as I transition from RAN engineer to service assurance, I need to understand what they care about and what is contextual for them, right? And this is how, if I say automation in the RAN functional space and I go to, operational functional space, right? I have to,
For like a core network.
I have the core network, right? I need to be able to shift perspectives and then deliver a perspective. I would just say, well, we often say use case driven, say an experience or conversation, right? And then I also need to be able to connect it too, right? Because ultimately on the customer side, right, it's an organization. So, things go from one space to the next, And so we need to be able to surf, navigate, understand these spaces, and we need to give exposure to our sales teams, right? What's important here.
Yeah, I'm always interested in connecting the dots and connecting people as well. So I like the way that you completed the answer to that previous question, and also kind of leads into the next one a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the future of automation for telcos. What do you think the future holds?
I mean, if I were king for a day, I would think, the future holds contextual automation, right? What I mean by that is like, give me a 5G network and, maybe some artificial intelligence says, oh, okay, you need these things. Let me pull these resources in to go build this thing for you, right? And I think as we work these components out, leading and marching into the future, the components and resources needed to do that will begin to be in place in our operators' networks. And then, we'll be able to say, you kind of see it, right? This is what a YAML file does, right? You kind of say, I write this thing out and it pulls resources to make this thing happen, right? Now we want to be able to say, hey, platform, give me this, right? Give me a slice here to support this with this SLA. So I'll give my infrastructure, my platform context to support a use case, and off it goes, right? And I think that is the future of automation, and that's what what would be exciting in terms of to support cross-functional use cases.
That's really great, Jason. Thank you so much for your insight into automation and how it's helping telcos and how VMware is helping. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Great talking with you.
Thanks. Bye.